Morning came with a gradual brightening of the bioluminescent plants. The pulsing lights shifted from deep purples back to softer blues and greens. Yuna woke from an uncomfortable sleep on the hard ground, her back aching and her clothes damp from the humid air. She had taken the last watch shift, and now all three Vrexians were sleeping in a pile near the rock. She stood carefully, trying not to wake them, and stretched her sore muscles. The forest looked different in the day cycle. Less threatening but still deeply alien, she could see the patterns of light on the trees more clearly now, and she noticed something interesting. The plants that grew closest to the ground all seemed to lean in the same direction, as if reaching toward something. Yuna knelt down to examine them more closely. Water. They were leaning toward moisture. She followed their direction and found a small depression in the ground where dew had collected. It wasn't much, but it was something. "What are you doing?" Jiwan's voice came from behind her. Yuna turned to see all three Vrexians awake and watching her. "Looking for water. We'll run out of what we have by tonight." She showed them the small collection of dew in the depression. "The plants here are showing us where moisture collects. If we're careful, we can gather water from the environment." Using a leaf from one of the larger plants, Yuna carefully transferred the dew into their water bottles. It was slow work, and they only managed to add about a quarter bottle of water, but it was better than nothing. "On your home world," Yuna asked as she worked, "how do you find water when you're hunting?" Minho stepped forward. "We follow prey animals to water sources, or we track dry riverbeds upstream. In the cold season, we melt ice." "Same basic principle," Yuna said. "Watch what the environment tells you. These plants are telling us where moisture is." They spent the next hour gathering more dew from other depressions and plant leaves. It was tedious work, but it gave them something to do and helped preserve their supplies. The Vrexians worked alongside Yuna, their initial reluctance fading as they saw the results. Hyeji found a cluster of plants with thick, water-filled stems. "Are these safe to drink?" she asked. Yuna examined them carefully. "I don't know. On Earth, I'd test a small amount and wait to see if there was a reaction. But with alien biology, it's too risky. We stick with collecting dew for now." As the day grew warmer, they heard more sounds from the forest around them. Strange bird-like creatures called from the canopy above, though Yuna never got a clear look at them. Insect-like things buzzed past, some as large as her hand. The young Vrexians tracked every movement with predator focus, but they stayed in their position. "This is harder than I thought it would be," Jiwan admitted. She was sitting on the ground now, having given up her constant pacing. "Just sitting here. Every instinct tells me to move, to hunt, to do something." "I know," Yuna said. "Humans feel it too. We call it restlessness. It's part of our survival instinct. Our brains think movement equals progress. But it doesn't, not here," Minho said. He was starting to understand. "Right. Here, movement without direction is just wasted energy." Yuna pulled out one of the compressed food bars and divided it into portions again, "which is why we conserve what we have." After they ate their small breakfast, Yuna suggested they organize their space better. She had them gather the softer moss from around the clearing to create better sleeping areas. She showed them how to use large leaves to create shade from the bright plant light. She had them practice signals they could use if they heard aircraft overhead. "You're treating this like a long-term camp," Hyeji observed. "I'm preparing for whatever comes," Yuna replied. "Hope for the best, plan for the worst. If your father finds us today, then great. If it takes longer, we're ready." Jiwan was quiet for a moment, then asked, "What if he doesn't find us?" It was the question they'd all been thinking but hadn't said aloud. Yuna sat down and looked at each of them. "Then we make a new plan. We wait here for 3 full days. That's standard search protocol. If no rescue comes by then, we reassess. Maybe the storm was worse than we thought. Maybe the whole ship is in trouble. We don't know, and we can't make decisions based on things we don't know." 3 days, Minho repeated. "We don't have enough food for 3 days. We have enough if we're careful. And we can forage. I've been watching what the small creatures here eat. We can test some of those plants carefully. Humans can survive a long time with very little food if we have water. Vrexians need more food than humans," Jiwan said. "We're larger, we burn more energy." Yuna nodded. "Which is another reason to stay still and conserve energy. Your father knows this planet was interfering with equipment. He knows we might have lost communications. He's not going to give up on you." She saw something in Jiwan's eyes then. Fear, yes, but also something else. Trust, maybe? Or hope. Tell me about him, Yuna said. Your father. What's he like when he's not being the stern pack leader? Jiwon's expression softened. He's different at home. He tells jokes, bad ones. He teaches us hunting techniques, but he always makes sure we understand why each technique works. He says a good hunter doesn't just know what to do, but why to do it. He makes the best flame-roasted meat, Hyeji added, and he sings old songs from our clan's history. His voice is terrible, but we love it anyway. Minho laughed, a sound Yuna hadn't heard from him before. Remember when he tried to teach us the courtship dance and he fell over his own feet? Mother laughed so hard she couldn't breathe. They talked about their family for a while, and Yuna saw them relax in ways they hadn't since the storm. This was what humans did in survival situations. They told stories. They remembered good things. They kept their spirits up. In return, Yuna told them about her own family on Earth. Her grandmother who taught her patience through gardening. Her brother who became a ship engineer. Her childhood dreams of seeing alien worlds and how surreal it still felt to be living those dreams. Do you miss Earth? Hyeji asked. Sometimes, Yuna admitted. Especially Earth food. Real fruit, fresh bread. But I wouldn't trade this for anything. Getting to see places like this, meeting people like you. This is what I always wanted. Even when you're lost and might die, Jiwon asked with a slight smile. Even then, Yuna said, though I'd prefer to survive and tell the story later. As the afternoon wore on, they heard something in the distance. A sound that made all of them freeze. It was mechanical, a humming that didn't belong in this organic forest. Aircraft. Minho jumped to his feet. They all looked up, trying to see through the canopy. The sound grew louder, then started to fade. The signal. Yuna grabbed the signal mirror from her pack. Everyone grab something reflective. Wave it above your heads. They all found things to reflect light. Yuna used the mirror, angling it toward where the sound was coming from. The Vrexians used their claws, their personal items, anything that might catch light. They jumped and waved and shouted, even though they knew sound wouldn't carry that far. But the aircraft sound faded away without slowing. It had passed over them but hadn't seen them. The disappointment was crushing. Hyeji actually sat down hard, her shoulders slumped. They were right there. They were searching, Yuna said, trying to keep the disappointment out of her own voice. Which means your father is actively looking. They'll make more passes. This is good news. How is that good news? Jiwon's voice cracked with frustration. They didn't see us. Because now we know they're looking. Now we know aircraft are flying again. Which means the electromagnetic interference is clearing. Next time they fly over, we'll be more visible. Yuna was already moving, gathering more of the brightest glowing plants. Help me. We're going to make this camp impossible to miss from the air. The three Vrexians stared at her for a moment. Then slowly they began to help. If a human could find hope in a missed rescue, then maybe they could too. The alien night fell quickly and the forest transformed into something even stranger. The bioluminescent plants pulsed with rhythms that seemed almost like breathing. Blues and greens shifted to deeper purples and reds. Sounds that had been distant during the day now felt close and threatening. Every rustle in the undergrowth made the young Vrexians' ears swivel toward the source. Yuna had finally convinced them to rest after several hours of their nervous pacing. She had pulled out the emergency supply pack from her belt and taken inventory. 2 water bottles, some compressed food bars, a small thermal blanket, a basic first aid kit, and a signal mirror. Not much, but enough to work with. She set up their small camp methodically, showing the 3 Vrexians how to arrange their space for maximum efficiency. She used the thermal blanket to create a reflective marker, hanging it from a low branch where it would catch any light. She gathered some of the glowing plants and arranged them in a pattern around their position, creating a visible signal from above. What good will that do? Jiwon asked, watching Yuna work. Nothing is flying overhead. We haven't seen any aircraft since the storm. Not yet, Yuna agreed. But when the electromagnetic interference clears, your father will send drones. These markers will make us visible from the air. Minho sniffed at one of the glowing plants Yuna had gathered. How do you know the storm will clear? I don't know for certain, Yuna admitted. But storms always end eventually. And when this one does, we want to be ready. Hyeji was the first to actually sit down near Yuna's rock. She pulled her legs close to her body, making herself smaller. I've never been away from father for this long, she said quietly. Yuna felt a pang of sympathy. For all their fierce appearance and proud bearing, these were still young people far from home. Tell me about your homeworld, she said. What's it like? Hyeji's eyes brightened slightly. It's nothing like this. The sky is always red from our star. The trees are tall and black and they don't glow like these strange ones. The ground is hard stone, not soft like this moss. Sounds harsh, Yuna said. It is harsh, Jiwan joined in, moving closer to the group. That's what makes us strong. Only the worthy survive to adulthood on our world. Minho sat down too, completing the small circle around Yuna. Father says that's why other species don't understand us. They think we're violent, but we're just survivors. Everything on our world wants to kill you. You learn to be strong or you die. Yuna nodded, understanding better now. On Earth, humans weren't the strongest either. We were hunted by creatures with bigger teeth and claws. We survived because we learned to work together and think ahead. But you have no natural weapons, Yeji said, examining Yuna's small hands with curiosity. How did you fight? We didn't fight, not at first. We ran away and hid. We learned which plants were safe to eat. We learned to make tools from rocks and sticks. We learned to communicate in complex ways so we could warn each other of danger. Yuna smiled. We were very good at being afraid. Jiwan's ears perked up in confusion. Good at being afraid? That doesn't make sense. Fear keeps you alive, Yuna explained, but only if you don't let it control you. The humans who survived weren't the ones who never felt fear. They were the ones who felt it and then figured out how to use it. She reached into the supply pack and pulled out the compressed food bars. We should eat something. Small amounts to make it last. She broke the bars into pieces, rationing them carefully. The Vrexians ate their portions slowly, though Yuna could tell they were still hungry afterward. She was hungry too, but she knew they might be here for a while. Better to have something to eat tomorrow than to be comfortable tonight. As they ate, Yuna told them stories. She talked about early human explorers who got lost in deserts and jungles on Earth. She told them about survival techniques that humans had developed over thousands of years. She explained how humans had learned to read the environment, to find water to signal for rescue. There was a human pilot once, Yuna said, who crashed his aircraft in a frozen wilderness. He was alone, injured, with almost no supplies. He knew rescue teams were looking for him, but the area was huge. Do you know what he did? Built a fire? Minho guessed. Tried to walk out? Hyeji suggested. He stayed with his aircraft, Yuna said, for 37 days. The wreckage was much easier to spot than a single person walking. He rationed his food. He melted snow for water. He kept himself busy with small tasks. And he waited. When they finally found him, he was weak but alive. If he had tried to walk out, he would have died. Jiwan was quiet for a long moment. 37 days of just sitting and waiting. That sounds like torture. I'm sure it was hard, Yuna agreed. But it was also smart. He understood something important. Rescue is easier when you make yourself findable. The night grew deeper and strange sounds echoed through the forest. Something howled in the distance, a sound that made the hair on Yuna's neck stand up. The three Vrexians instantly went on alert, their bodies tense and ready. Should we move? Minho whispered. That sound is a predator call. Where would we move to? Yuna asked calmly. We don't know where we are. Running in the dark through unknown territory is how you get hurt. We stay here, stay quiet, and stay alert. Another howl answered the first, this one from a different direction. The Vrexians' ears flattened. They're hunting, Jiwan said. Pack hunters coordinating with each other. Yuna's heart was beating faster, but she kept her voice steady. Then we don't act like prey. Prey runs, we're not running. We have a position, we have each other, and we stay calm. She was scared, truly scared for the first time since landing on this planet. But she had learned long ago that showing panic only made things worse. Fear was information. It told her there was danger. But what she did with that information was her choice. The howls continued for what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. They seemed to circle the group's position, getting closer, then farther away. Yuna gathered some rocks just in case. The Vrexians flexed their claws, ready to fight if needed. But slowly the sounds faded. Whatever was hunting in the night had found other prey or lost interest. The immediate danger past, Hiji let out a long breath. I thought we were going to have to fight. Maybe, Yuna said. But sometimes the best fight is the one you avoid. We didn't panic. We didn't run into an ambush. We stayed safe. Jiwan looked at Yuna with something approaching respect. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Yuna asked. A weak prey animal that would slow us down. Someone we'd have to protect. Jiwan's tail curled around herself. But you're the one keeping us alive right now. We're keeping each other alive, Yuna corrected gently. If those predators had attacked, I would have needed your claws and your strength. This isn't about who's stronger. It's about using the right tools for the right situation. She pulled the thermal blanket around herself and leaned back against the rock. We should try to rest in shifts. 2 sleep while 1 keeps watch. We rotate every few hours. I'll take first watch, Minho offered. Wake me for second, Yuna said. As she closed her eyes, she heard Jiwon whisper to Hyeji, maybe humans aren't as weak as we thought. Different, Hyeji whispered back. Not weak, just different. Yuna smiled to herself in the darkness. They were learning, and so was she. She was learning that these proud, fierce warriors were also capable of fear and doubt. They were learning that strength came in many forms, and somewhere out in this strange forest, Daehyun was searching for them. All they had to do was stay alive and stay findable until he succeeded. The second day would bring new challenges, but tonight they had survived together, and that was enough. Yuna approached the 3 young Vrexians carefully, watching their body language. Their ears were still pinned back and their tails moved in short, agitated jerks. She had studied enough predator species to know these were signs of stress and confusion. The creatures that had seemed so confident and dismissive just an hour ago now looked like lost children. Are any of you hurt? Yuna asked, keeping her voice calm and steady. Jiwon's head snapped toward her, eyes wide with a mixture of relief and something that looked almost like shame. We're fine, but our communication devices don't work. The storm destroyed everything electronic. Minho was turning in circles, his nose raised to the air. I can't smell Father's trail. The storm wind scattered all the scents. Everything smells wrong here. Hiji moved to a nearby tree and scratched marks into the bark with her claws. We need to mark our path. We should start walking. Father will be looking for us. Which direction? Yuna asked simply. The 3 Vrexians looked at each other. None of them had an answer. The shuttle was northeast, Jiwon said after a moment. We should go that way. How do you know which way is northeast? Yuna pulled out her tablet, showing them the dead screen. Our compasses don't work. The magnetic fields here are all scrambled. Jiwon's lips pulled back in frustration, showing her teeth. Then we follow the sun. Yuna looked up at the canopy above them. The bioluminescent trees created their own light, making it nearly impossible to see the sky. And even if they could, she wasn't sure this planet's sun would follow the same patterns as the ones they were used to. I think northeast is this way, Minho said, pointing with his clawed hand. No, it's this way, Hyeji argued, pointing in a completely different direction. Jiwon growled low in her throat. We're wasting time arguing. I say we go this way. She started walking in yet another direction. Yuna watched as the 3 young Vrexians began to move, each one certain they knew the right path. She understood what was happening. They were predators, used to trusting their instincts. But their instincts were designed for their home world, not this strange place where everything was alien and confusing. She followed behind them, saying nothing. The forest around them grew denser as they walked. The bioluminescent plants created patterns of light and shadow that played tricks on the eyes. Strange sounds echoed from all directions, making it impossible to tell where anything actually was. After about 30 minutes, Yuna noticed something. They had passed the same cluster of purple glowing mushrooms twice. They were walking in circles. Wait, she called out. Stop for a moment. We don't have time to stop, Jiwon snapped. We need to keep moving. We've been here before, Yuna said, pointing to the mushrooms. See those? I took a sample from them 20 minutes ago. We're going in circles. Minho's ears drooped. That's not possible. I was leading us straight. The light patterns are disorienting, Yuna explained. Our brains are trying to make sense of signals that don't match what we expect. It's like an optical illusion, but for all our senses. Hyeji sat down heavily, her tail curling around her legs. So what do we do? Just stand here and wait to die? Let's think about this logically, Yuna said. We need to figure out what direction to go. We're trying to do that. Jiwon's voice rose in frustration. But you said yourself the equipment doesn't work. Then we use something else. Yuna knelt down and examined the moss on the ground. On Earth, moss grows thicker on the north side of trees because that's where there's more moisture and less sun. Maybe the plants here have similar patterns. She spent several minutes examining different trees, looking for any consistent pattern in how the bioluminescent growth appeared. But every tree seemed random with no clear indicators. Jiwon paced back and forth. This is taking too long. Father's out there looking for us. We should be moving. Moving where? Yuna asked. If we don't know where we're going, we'll just get more lost. At least we'll be doing something. Jiwon's voice cracked slightly. Predators don't just sit and wait. We hunt, we chase, we move. Yuna looked at the young Vrexian and saw past her aggressive posture. She saw fear. Jiwon was scared, and her instinct was to run, to fight, to do anything except stay still. It went against everything in her nature to simply wait. My species isn't a predator species, Yuna said quietly. We don't have claws or enhanced senses. For most of our evolution, we were the ones being hunted. Do you know how we survived? The three young Vrexians looked at her. For the first time since boarding the ship, they seemed actually interested in what she had to say. We learned to think instead of just react. We learned patience. And we learned that sometimes the smartest thing to do is stop moving. That makes no sense, Hyeji said. Stopping makes you a target. Only if you're prey trying to escape a predator, Yuna replied. But we're not running from something. We're waiting to be found. There's a difference. Minho tilted his head, considering her words. But if we stay here, how will Father find us? We're just one spot in a huge forest. Exactly, Yuna said. We're one spot. A stationary spot. If we keep moving, we're constantly changing position. That makes us much harder to track. But if we stay in one place, if we make ourselves visible and wait, then your father's search party can systematically cover the area until they find us. She could see the conflict on their faces. Everything in their predator nature screamed at them to move, to act, to hunt for a solution. The idea of sitting still felt like giving up. I know it feels wrong, Yuna continued. Humans have a saying, don't just stand there, do something. But sometimes the wisest version of that is don't just do something, stand there. Jiwon's tail lashed in agitation. And what if you're wrong? What if sitting here is a mistake? Then we'll make a new plan, Yuna said. But right now I'm going to sit down and wait. You three can do whatever you think is best. She found a flat rock and sat down on it, crossing her legs. She pulled out her non-electronic notebook and began sketching the plants around them, as if she had all the time in the world. The three Vrexians stared at her. They looked at each other, then back at her, then at each other again. Their confusion was obvious. This small, weak human was just sitting there, completely calm, while they were falling apart with anxiety. This is crazy, Jiwon muttered, but she didn't walk away. Minho moved closer to Yuna. What are you doing? Documenting the local flora, Yuna replied without looking up. Since we're here anyway, I might as well do my job. Hyeji made a sound that might have been a laugh or a growl. You're insane. Maybe, Yuna agreed. But I'm an insane human who's not going to waste energy wandering in circles. Your father knows we're missing. He knows roughly where we were when the storm hit. He's probably organizing a search grid right now. The best thing we can do is make ourselves easy to find and conserve our energy. The young Vrexians didn't sit down, but they stopped trying to leave. They prowled around the small clearing, their instincts fighting against the logic of Yuna's words. As the alien day began to fade and the bioluminescent plants grew brighter, Yuna remained on her rock, calm and patient. She understood their struggle. She felt the fear too, the urge to do something, anything, but she also knew that panic killed more lost people than staying put ever did. So she sat, and she waited, and she showed three young predators that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was absolutely nothing at all. The stars looked different this far out in the galaxy. Yuna pressed her hand against the cold window of the observation deck and watched the swirling colors of an unknown nebula paint the darkness. She had been aboard the horizon's edge for 3 months now, studying alien life forms that most humans had never even heard of. It was the job she had always dreamed of, even if it meant being millions of light years away from Earth. Behind her, heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor. Yuna turned to see Daehyun approaching, his massive form filling the doorway. The Vrexian stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in dark fur that seemed to absorb the light around him. His eyes glowed a faint amber in the dim hallway, and his teeth were visible even when his mouth was closed. Every human instinct told her to run, but Yuna had learned to ignore those feelings weeks ago. The captain wants you on the bridge, Daehyun said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to come from deep in his chest. We found something interesting. Yuna followed him through the ship's corridors, her small frame barely reaching his shoulder. The other crew members moved aside as they passed, giving Daehyun the space that his species commanded. The Vrexians were known throughout the galaxy as apex predators, warriors from a harsh world where only the strongest survived. Their reputation preceded them wherever they went. Captain Borum was studying a holographic display when they entered the bridge. The older woman looked up and smiled at Yuna. "We've detected a planet with some unusual characteristics. The electromagnetic readings are unlike anything in our database." Yuna moved closer to examine the data. The planet below them was covered in dense forests that seemed to glow with their own light. Strange energy patterns pulsed across its surface, creating waves of color that reminded her of auroras back home. "The readings are interfering with our standard equipment," Borum continued. "We need to send a team down to investigate, but our scanners won't work properly. We'll be going in blind." Daehyun stepped forward. "My people are equipped for this. We don't need machines to tell us what our senses already know." The captain nodded. "I was hoping you'd say that. But I also want Yuna to go with you. We need a scientist down there to document whatever you find." Yuna felt a small thrill of excitement mixed with nervousness. This was exactly the kind of fieldwork she loved, but going down to an unknown planet with equipment failures was risky. Daehyun's ears flattened slightly against his head. "My 3 youngsters have been asking to prove themselves. This would be a good trial for them." Yuna had seen the 3 young Vrexians around the ship. They were Daehyun's children from his home world, brought along to learn the ways of space exploration. Jiwon was the boldest, always challenging others and testing boundaries. Minyo was more cautious but fiercely loyal to his sister. Hyeji was smaller than the other 2 but made up for it with aggressive determination. All 3 had barely acknowledged Yuna's existence since boarding the ship. "Are you sure they're ready?" Borum asked. "They need to learn sometime," Daehyun replied, "and this seems like a controlled situation. We'll keep the human safe." Yuna bristled slightly at being called the human, as if she were a fragile package that needed protecting, but she said nothing. She had learned that earning respect among the Vrexians took time. 2 hours later, Yuna found herself strapped into a landing shuttle next to 3 very excited young Vrexians. They chattered to each other in their own language, their tails swishing with anticipation. Daehyun sat across from her, his expression unreadable. "Remember," he told his children in the common tongue, probably for Yuna's benefit, "this is not a hunt. You are there to observe and protect. The scientist must return safely." Jiwon's lips pulled back slightly, showing rows of sharp teeth. It took Yuna a moment to realize it was meant to be a smile. "We understand, Father. We'll make sure the little human doesn't wander off." The way she said little human made it clear what Jiwon thought of her. Yuna had heard it before from other species. Humans were seen as weak, soft creatures who had somehow stumbled into space travel despite their obvious physical limitations. They had no claws, no natural armor, no enhanced senses. They were prey animals pretending to be explorers. The shuttle broke through the planet's atmosphere, and Yuna felt her stomach lurch as they descended. Through the window, she could see the bioluminescent forest growing closer. Trees that seemed to be made of living light swayed in winds she couldn't feel yet. The beauty of it took her breath away. They landed in a small clearing, and the moment the door opened, Yuna was hit with a wave of scents and sounds. The air was thick and humid, filled with the chirping and buzzing of unseen creatures. The trees around them pulsed with soft blue and green light, creating patterns that seemed almost purposeful. Daehyun led them into the forest, his children spreading out in a protective formation with Yuna in the center. She tried not to feel insulted by their obvious assumption that she needed guarding. Instead, she focused on her work, taking samples and recording observations. The young Vrexians moved through the forest with natural grace, their bodies perfectly designed for this kind of environment. Yuna had to work twice as hard to keep up, her boots slipping on the moss-covered ground. She heard Hyeji snicker behind her when she nearly fell. They had been walking for about an hour when Yuna noticed something strange. Her equipment was showing increasingly erratic readings. She stopped to check her tablet, frowning at the display. "Something's wrong," she said. "The electromagnetic interference is getting worse." Daehyun moved to her side, examining the device with interest. "Can you fix it?" Before Yuna could answer, the sky above them seemed to explode with light. Brilliant colors streaked across the canopy, and Yuna felt her hair stand on end from the static electricity in the air. Her tablet went dark in her hands. "Everyone back to the shuttle," Daehyun roared, but the storm came too fast. The light became blinding and Yuna felt herself being pulled in different directions. She reached out, trying to find someone, anyone, but her hands grasped only air. The world spun around her and then everything went dark. When Yuna opened her eyes, she was lying on soft moss in a part of the forest she didn't recognize. The bioluminescent trees cast strange shadows around her. She sat up slowly, checking herself for injuries. Everything seemed intact. Then she heard voices nearby. Young voices speaking in panicked tones. She found Jiwon, Minho, and Hyeji huddled together about 20 feet away. They were looking around frantically, their ears flat against their heads and their tails tucked low. Yuna had never seen them look scared before. "Father?" Jiwon called out. "Father, where are you?" There was no answer except the strange sounds of the alien forest. They were lost, and from the looks on their faces, the young predators had no idea what to do about it. The third day began with heavy rain. It came suddenly, without warning, pouring through the canopy in warm sheets. Yuna woke to water dripping on her face and sat up quickly. The three Vrexians were already awake, their fur plastered to their bodies as they huddled under a large leaf. "Finally, something goes right," Yuna said, pulling out all their containers. "Help me collect this water." They spent the next hour gathering as much rainwater as they could carry. They filled the water bottles, used leaves to create temporary collectors, and even found hollow sections of plants that held water like natural cups. By the time the rain stopped, they had more water than they'd had since landing. "See?" Yuna said, wringing out her soaked shirt. "The universe provides eventually." Jiwon shook her fur out, sending water flying everywhere. "You find the positive in everything, don't you?" "It's a survival trait," Yuna replied. "Despair doesn't help anyone stay alive. Optimism, even forced optimism, keeps you looking for solutions." They were all hungry now. The food bars were gone as of last night. Yuna's stomach cramped with emptiness, and she could see the young Vrexians were faring even worse. They were predators built for high-energy expenditure. Their bodies needed food more urgently than hers. "We need to consider foraging," Yuna said. "I've been watching what the local animals eat. There are some small creatures that keep eating from those purple fungi over there." Minho looked where she pointed. "Those could be poisonous to us even if they're safe for the local animals." "True," Yuna agreed. "But we can test them. On Earth, there's a process called the Universal Edibility Test. You test a small amount on your skin first, wait. Then on your lips, wait. Then a tiny amount in your mouth, wait. If no reactions, you try swallowing a small amount and wait several hours." "That's incredibly slow," Hyeji said. "It's also incredibly safe. Better slow than dead." Yuna gathered a small sample of the purple fungi. "I'll test it first. My metabolism is different from yours, so if it affects me badly, you'll know not to try it." "No," Jiwon said firmly. "If anyone tests unknown food, it should be me. I'm the strongest. I can handle toxins better." Yuna looked at the young Vrexian with surprise. 3 days ago, Jiwon wouldn't have cared if something hurt the weak human. Now she was trying to protect her. "We tested on me first because I'm the smallest," Yuna explained gently. "If something is poisonous, a small amount will affect me less severely than it would affect you. I can tolerate being sick more easily than you can." The logic was backwards from what the Vrexians expected, but they eventually accepted it. Yuna began the careful process of testing the fungi, while the three young predators watched anxiously. Hours passed slowly. The fungi left a mild tingle on Yuna's skin, but no rash, no reaction on her lips. A tiny taste produced no numbness or burning. Finally, she swallowed a small piece. "Now we wait," she said. "A few hours to see if there's any stomach reaction." "And if there is?" Minho asked. "Then we know not to eat that one, and we try something else tomorrow." Yuna lay back on the moss bed they'd made. Survival is patient work. While they waited, they heard the aircraft sound again. This time they were ready. They'd spent the previous evening arranging their brightest collected plants in a large pattern, creating a visible signal from above. They all grabbed their reflective items and waved them frantically at the sky. The humming sound circled their area once, twice, then it seemed to slow down. "They see us," Hyeji shouted. "They see us." But the aircraft moved on again, the sound fading to nothing. The disappointment was worse this time. They'd been so sure. Jiwon made a sound of pure frustration and punched the ground with her fist. "They're searching in a grid pattern," Yuna said, though her own voice shook slightly. That pass was closer than the last one. "They're narrowing the search area. How can you be so calm?" Jiwon demanded. We were right there. Why didn't they see us? I'm not calm, Yuna admitted. I'm scared and tired and hungry. But I'm also still thinking. Those are two separate things. She stood up and examined their signal pattern from different angles. The canopy is too thick. Even with our markers, they can't see us clearly from directly above. We need to create a gap in the canopy. How? Minho asked. We can't cut down these trees. They're massive. Yuna studied the area around them. There was a section where the trees grew slightly less dense, where more light came through. We can enlarge what's already there. Look for dead branches we can break off. Clear away any undergrowth blocking the view from above. Make this clearing as visible as possible. They worked together, the young Vrexians using their strength to break branches and move obstacles, while Yuna directed the work. She had them create clear sight lines and arrange their brightest markers to be visible from multiple angles. It was exhausting work, especially without food, but it gave them purpose. As they worked, Yuna felt the fungi in her stomach. There was some mild discomfort, but no serious pain, no nausea, no dizziness. After 4 hours with no worse symptoms, she declared it probably safe. Small amounts only, she warned. We increased slowly and watched for any delayed reactions. The fungi tasted bitter and earthy, not pleasant at all, but it was food. They each ate a small portion, rationing it carefully. It wasn't enough to fill their stomachs, but it took the edge off the hunger. That evening, as alien dusk settled over the forest, they sat together in their improved camp. They'd done everything they could. The signal was as visible as they could make it. They had water. They had a small amount of food. Now there was nothing to do but wait. I owe you an apology, Jiwan said suddenly. When we first boarded the ship, I thought humans were weak, fragile things that didn't belong in space. I laughed at you behind your back. I know, Yuna said simply. I heard you. Jiwan's ears flattened with shame. I was wrong. You're not weak. You're just strong in different ways. Ways I didn't understand. Humans are weak in some ways, Yuna corrected. I can't fight like you can. I can't track by scent or see in the dark. But I can be patient. I can plan. I can stay calm when my instincts are screaming at me to panic. Different species, different strengths. You taught us something important, Minho said. You taught us that sometimes doing nothing is doing something. That waiting is its own kind of hunting. Heiji moved closer to Yuna, settling down beside her. If we get rescued tomorrow, I'm going to tell everyone on the ship about this. About how the human kept us alive with nothing but her brain and her weird, calm attitude. When we get rescued, Yuna corrected gently. Not if, when. They slept close together that night, human and Vrexians sharing warmth and comfort. Yuna took last watch again. Sitting under the stars, she could barely see through the canopy. She was exhausted, hungry, and uncertain, but she was also proud. Proud of herself for keeping them alive, and proud of these 3 young predators for learning to trust a different kind of strength. As dawn approached on the 4th day, Yuna heard it again. The aircraft sound, closer this time. She woke the others quickly. This is it, she said. Everyone in position. Make noise, reflect light, jump, wave. Everything we've got. They took their positions in the clearing they'd created, in the pattern they'd designed to be visible from above. The humming grew louder, louder, and then a shadow passed over the gap in the canopy. The aircraft slowed. Circled once, then hovered directly overhead. Yuna felt tears streaming down her face as a voice crackled through a speaker. Ground party, we have visual confirmation. Rescue shuttle incoming. Remain in position. Jiwan let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Minho and Heiji grabbed each other and jumped up and down. Yuna just sat down on her rock, her legs suddenly too weak to hold her. They were found. The human had sat down, and the predator pups had found her again. Together, they'd survived.